Welcome to Beyond Number 8, where we explore agri-tech innovation in the 21st century. Kiwis are proud of their number 8 wire mentality, their ability to innovate with the most basic materials. But in the 21st century, science and technology have provided tools we could have never imagined, opening up new horizons for primary sector innovation. So where is it headed? What opportunities are beckoning? And how can we make sure New Zealand Agritech is ready and able to take advantage of them? Well, here we explore how we can innovate beyond number 8.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Number 8. I'm Peter Barrowclough, the Chief Executive of Lincoln Agritech. And in this series, my colleagues and I will look at the challenges and opportunities facing New Zealand's agritech sector. So today we're looking at the Agritech Skills Gap. Given the potential our sector has for New Zealand, what are the skills that are needed? Are we training the right people and enough of them? What happens if we can't train those people, and why should young people seriously consider a career in agritech? So today I'm joined by Brendan O'Connell, Chief Executive of Agritech New Zealand, and Maria Jose AlvArez, Investment Manager for W.N.T Ventures. Welcome, Brendan.
Hi, Peter. Great to be here.
Thank you for coming along. And welcome, MJ.
Hi, good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming, MJ. So, Brendan, what skills is the industry crying out for? What are the gaps?
Well, I guess fundamentally there's a call for many different skills because there's a high level of increased investment in agri-tech, and so you've got firms growing their teams, looking at new opportunities overseas, and so a lot of those skills are digital-based skills with the sort of agri-tech nuance of digital skills or people who have digital skills who have an understanding of some of the biological and physical systems used on farm. Now, luckily, New Zealand has been great at producing people who have that sort of collection of skills. But as we're seeing more companies get started, existing companies grow, trying to find people who have those digital skills and an understanding of biological systems is becoming a real challenge. Some of it, of course, is feeding into a time in New Zealand where there's just a lack of digital skills. We have 4,000 unfilled software roles across the country. So some of this is competition within the sector, and globally, some of it is competition between sectors in terms of trying to access talent. So it's not a unique challenge for agri-tech, but we have our particular nuance to it when we're looking for that sort of combination of skills. So yeah, that's it at a high level. I'm very happy to delve into some of the details in terms of specific skill sets. I know that myself and MJ were talking about that previously, and maybe she has some comments on some of the specific skills as well that she sees lacking from businesses.
Yeah, I'll come to you, MJ. So agritech's diverse. There's you need ecology skills, horticultural skills, engineering. And much more. So, what are some of the key skills that Brendan has touched on that we need to be looking for?
I think that there are many different skills that historically haven't been considered agri-tech related, or people wouldn't necessarily connect the dots and think that can be applied to that discipline. But I think that there are many disciplines that are relevant: engineering, computer vision, automation, kind of linking to the digitalization of the industry as a whole. But also, a particular one that I think is coming in the last couple of years is AI. But now with yield optimization, labor shortages, meat alternatives, and trying to optimize how we feed the planet, artificial intelligence has a very niche application. And New Zealand is starting to breed some of those new companies looking at those skills and looking at those gaps. Parallel to that, I will also say that business and commercialization is a fundamental skill when we're trying to connect the dots. We cannot have farmers doing one thing in silo and then having business and commercialization and managers and marketing trying to do something different. We need to develop applications that will have a consumer and that will have a market. And the earlier on we start connecting research organizations, CRIs, universities with farmers and being in ground with that application, the better it is for our economy. And in 10 years from now, we can evolve the disciplines and train people better to think with that mindset from day one.
Yeah, so that connectivity is just huge, isn't it? And how do we get people to talk to enough farmers to make sure that the solutions fit what the farmers actually need and will use, So how do researchers say get out there and talk to farmers?
So one is having more people in business development going to like the ground and trying to understand not only New Zealand solutions, but also global solutions. But how can we develop it from here? The private sector can also do a lot. We have big corporations in New Zealand that are looking at their own innovation and are investing. A lot of that investment goes overseas, and we have plenty of opportunities here. And if we gather those together and develop, for example, one soil application or one moisture application instead of many that solve very niche problems, that will also create a shift.
Brendan, where do you think the people are getting their AI skills from? Where are they learning that in New Zealand?
Well, I guess, our universities are definitely doing their work in terms of turning people out with some of those skills, but we also see those natively being developed across different businesses and different applications. Again, a lot of what we're seeing is people coming from one sector to another sector. So, there's definitely an attraction to Agritech if the training of AI systems is what interests somebody. The training of AI systems within an agricultural context is a really great and interesting challenge. It's really interesting, it's really easy to identify. And so we see people coming across from existing, other sectors coming into the sector because of that unique challenge that you get with agricultural pieces. So that's why some of those people are coming. And I would like to sort of echo MJ's points there around, so these technical skills and bringing them across from different sectors is really key, and that's going to be either an enabler or an impingement on the growth of the agri-tech sector here. And those commercialization skills really are key as well. So we can have all of the technical people that we want, and we'll keep on trying to enable that in different ways, and there are different ways. But, those commercialization skills, and it's exactly as MJ says, it's both the skills to make sure that there's a good product market fit, there's a really good farmer empathy, and there's really good understanding. And that does mean physically getting out there. It also means the type of ecosystem development or sector development that MJ is talking about, as well as making sure that that there's an efficient usage of time and resources across different players within the ecosystem. So whether that's industry associations, individual companies, the investors and supporting groups that are helping those companies, trying to look for where there is commonality and where something can be scaled up significantly, I think becomes a really important part of both addressing the skills gap, so you're being as efficient as possible in the use of talent, but also that fit for purpose piece. And the only other thing I'd add to that in terms of the commercialization piece, and this is another skills gap that's been acknowledged in the sector, especially as we look at national strategies for an industry transformation plan and what skills are needed, is that global business development piece as well. How do we bring in the people who've got experience of building businesses globally to look at taking New Zealand Agritech out to the world, and so as well as solving problems locally to start addressing and thinking of problems on an international basis. So that global business development skill set is yet another piece that we need to look at here, I think.
Yeah, and the pandemic's really upset that, hasn't it? So those ability to get out there and grow those businesses, the abilities of the people within the sector to meet face to face and join the dots and have those conversations. It's been really, really fragmented by the pandemic. So do you think that the tide is turning? We can get out there again and talk to each other face to face?
Well, I was interested to see how some of the international opportunities for meeting farmers overseas, meeting other development teams or other agri-tech businesses overseas has so quickly been taken up by many of our members. There was a recent Dairy UK event, and there was a large cohort from New Zealand that as soon as the doors were opened, as soon as they thought if they go, they'll be able to come back home, they were gone. And so we saw people going there straight away. And we're already seeing that with Australian events coming up in hot tech and wine tech in the next couple of weeks. There are companies out there. So yes, we've all been dislocated from each other or just disconnected from each other apart from the online world, which we have used really well. But it's very different, especially I think comments I've heard about online experiences, it's very easy to keep a project going online. If you've got a team or you have an existing customer, you can definitely keep things going and achieve a lot more online than we probably ever thought we could. What's more difficult is to establish new work and establish projects. And I think it's that type of work that people are definitely jumping back onto planes for now. And yes, like I say, we see that with various cohorts that have headed up to the UK recently and over to Australia, and we see that happening throughout the year.
Despite, yes, it's been difficult, we have seen great success stories in the last 2 years. So the pandemic has also facilitated growth in mindset of a global perspective from day one, because we haven't been able to get offshore and validate those technologies. We have seen in the capital raise side, we have seen companies in Agritech raise hundreds of millions combined for New Zealand. After we have grown, we have attracted more companies to relocate and base here. We have seen a recirculation of early employees, so kind of equal founders of previous companies that have been around for 10 years or so, spin off new opportunities. So I think that although it's been challenging to create new work, the existing companies, I think, that found a lot stronger ground here as well as offshore, because we have positioned ourselves and our agriculture innovation in a really good setting.
Yeah. So it's coming back to those skills, so if we have the growth that we think that is potentially there in the agritech sector, what kind of number of people are we going to need to grow these companies in the future?
I think that the number of people is TBC. I was looking at some statistics earlier, and we should expect to see the agritech sector in terms of employability to grow 3 to 5% in the next 5 years. And I think that number needs to grow at least in the double digits number to keep up with the demand that we're seeing. How will we use the people that we are getting and we're recruiting? And how do we expand with limited resources, because we're still a small country, a small economy, but how do we maximize that effort to create more success?
So Brendan, if we can't train all these people in New Zealand, where are we going to find the people that we need to grow these companies, and how are we going to get them into the country?
Well, the problem is simple, Peter. The solutions are where the challenge lies, I guess, sometimes, So, there's effectively three sources of talent, of course. It's our existing training systems and the pipeline of talent that can come through the universities or other places. There's cross-sector training, and I see that happening quite a bit. I've seen that happen in Europe quite a bit, and I think there's some potential for that in New Zealand, where people have some of these skills that are required, and they come and apply them for the first time to the agri-tech sector. And the third, of course, then is immigration settings. And we've had unique immigration challenges, of course, during the pandemic, and we did see good response from Immigration New Zealand in having border exemptions for I guess a new class of critical workers, which is the software community, the digital community, and there were 600 visas issued specifically for that purpose under a control mechanism with NZ Tech and the IT professionals groups. So that's an initial start, but of course it's insufficient in terms of the opportunities that we're trying to fill here. We've talked about New Zealand being the place that talent wants to live. I think there's a really good case for that, especially from people who have that interest in agri-tech to come to such a hotbed of primary sector activity, of commitment from our primary sector to look at doing things better. And we see that in terms of our current levels of adoption, our current use of technology. And even when we talk about this, how do you get to know your end user? We're blessed in New Zealand with, large cohorts of, I guess, what can be called early adopters, or people who are really willing to sort of engage in those early stages. That's a real strength across our system. And so the idea of being able to develop technology, to test technologies here, to develop technologies here, and to bring in the talent to enable that, there's real potential there. But of course, there's lots of different considerations when it comes to how those immigration settings really set. We believe that these are very productive roles. These are very productive inputs to the New Zealand economy. We know the Productivity Commission, really calls out that we need to be doing more of these high value roles, these high value activities, so that we can continue doing our primary sector work, but we can build the higher value pieces of technology solutions, like technology industries like agri-tech and other technology sectors. So we need to look at getting these people into the country.
Yeah, having just lost one of our star scientists to the Australians, the immigration thing's really, really important to me. And so it's great to see some movement there, but I think that a lot more has to be done, and we need to bring a lot more talent to the country. So, but speaking of talent, we've got you two as examples. So, MJ, tell us a little bit about why you got involved in Agritech and what you enjoy about it.
Wouldn't say that I chose Agritech as a career. I trained as a scientist, that's my passion. And agriculture impacts every single aspect of our life, the way we eat, the way our climate works, our soils, our water, our farming, the future. When I think about New Zealand or agriculture 2030, 2050, Agritech, it's at the center of that. And that intertwines with biotech, which is my passion. So I think that that's what I really enjoy and what has kept me working on that side. As an investor, I'm always thinking about what doesn't exist yet. And that's where I keep going back again to agriculture. None of these things are possible if we're not looking at the present and the things that we've done in the past. And I think agriculture tells the story about us as humanity and how we're changing and evolving, how we collect food and how we establish cities. All of that has been based in agriculture. So to me, it's really interesting to think that I might contribute to one or two things that will have an impact 50 years from now.
Well, we're really glad, MJ, that you made the choice to move to New Zealand. You're the perfect example of why we need to bring, talent like yourself into the country. And Brendan, for you, tell us a little bit about why you got involved in Agritech.
Well, my background, I studied mechanical engineering at university and straight away got involved in product development. So I've always been involved in electronics product development environments. And similar to MJ, just loved that approach of being able to create stuff and the teams that come together to take ideas into physical product. And so, across my career, I've worked in some pretty interesting sectors. I worked in biomedical and in telecommunications back when Nokia was a real giant. I've worked in light industry, in consumer electronics. And then in 2006, I started with a New Zealand Agritech business called True Test. And for me, I just, similar to what MJ's talking to in terms of that sense of purpose, that sense of connection, I really found a great affinity with, what Agritech is looking to enable and achieve, to help food systems, to help food producers to continue to do what they do, to improve on what they do. It's very easy to identify with that. Even in the consumer electronics times, I always talk about it that, it happened to be marine electronics that I was working on. We were working with some great teams on some great technologies, and yet you always knew that it was going to be sitting on somebody's boat, that was parked up and gets used maybe 40 or 50 hours a year for this particular piece of technology. So while it was great tech and you could get a lot of satisfaction as a technology creator in that piece, you sort of lacked a sense of connection with what difference it was really making other than improving somebody's recreation time. That was when I came to Agritech, for me personally, it was just feeling that I was doing work that, first of all, was getting noted by lots of people. So we've got the investment levels that are growing. We're trying to solve real global issues. We're working with people who really think about those things and want to make a contribution in that space. So I found a great affinity with both the purpose and the people. Definitely the pragmatism of our end users flows through to the challenge in our designs and our approach, and so it's sort of pragmatic aspiration is the combination that I think is great for the primary sector, and it's a very rewarding place to work.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you, Brendan and MJ, for sharing your insights on the Agritech Skills Gap today. For me, the major takeaway is that, what a fantastic industry to work in, massive opportunities for New Zealand and to improve conditions around the world and producing food and the environment, and what a great industry to join. So hopefully maybe some people that are thinking about a future career out there might join and go and study at university something in the Agritech skills area. As you mentioned, there's plenty of diversity in scientific skills that could apply to it. So thank you both very much today for joining me, and thanks again, MJ, and thank you, Brendan.
Thanks for listening to Beyond Number 8, presented by Lincoln Agritech. To find out more about Lincoln Agritech, visit lincolnagritech.co.nz. Subscribe to our newsletter in the podcast description below, Or find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook and keep up to date with our latest science and innovation. Until the next episode, when we'll continue exploring beyond number 8.